Hi, Mark here from the Tangibound Podcast Network and host of the flagship show, the Tangibound Podcast. Did you know that we over at Tangibound are always looking for amazing podcasts to promote? And did you also know that we are also proud nerds and geeks of everything from movies, music, gaming, TV shows, and comic books to wrestling, MMA, soccer, and football? Whatever you can nerd or geek out about, we've got it. And if you're interested, we can help you find it. And if you're a show looking for a place to call home, we've got you covered. Side effects may include upset stomach, dizziness, tumors, shakes, and in some rare cases, death from excessive laughter. Though to be fair, it's only sometimes. Other side effects may include diarrhea, gallstones, heart palpitations, and strong desire for cookies on the dark side. Talk to your doctor and visit TangiboundNetwork.com and see if Tangibound Network is right for you.
This is a Danger Entertainment podcast. DangerEntertainment.net. Danger Entertainment Podcast Network.
We're not doctors, therapists, trained professionals of any kind, so if you feel you do need help, please reach out and get the help you need. We have a whole list of things on our files page over on Facebook at facebook.com/crazylifepodcast. And or just search on the internet for the suicide prevention hotline number, or go to NAMI.org, or whatever resource you can find. But just please reach out for help if you need it. If you feel as though you're going to harm yourself or others, definitely reach out and try not to be alone. Also, if you feel that way and you realize that you're writing a note or making plans of how you would do, like harm yourself or others, definitely reach out. That's a huge red flag. And lastly, please do not replace the idea of therapy with listening to this show. Again, if you need help, please reach out and get the help that you need, or contact us. We can try to help you find the help that you need.
Life sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time, so stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to The Crazy Life, everybody. My name is Jen, and I am your hostess this evening. And with me, as always, is Brian. Hey, Brian.
Howdy.
And unfortunately, Hendo couldn't be with us tonight, but he is recording another fabulous podcast that he is on. And so we wish him all the luck with that. With that, Brian, how are you? How's your week's been?
Yeah. Well, yeah, first of all, sorry for, to anyone, for us not putting a show up last week. We've just really, like, us three, and then with the other, my other show, Salty Language, is like, it's just been really tough to line up schedules the last couple weeks. And the weird part is, it's not really because of anything huge. It's just stuff. Like, just the way it falls, it just keeps us from, because I think last week, each day that one of us was available, two of the others were not. And then eventually it just became like, oh, well, we're just going to move on, just not do it. So, it's not something we like to do, but, didn't really have much of a choice.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think back a week first because, I believe not a whole lot happened with me last week. It wasn't that that eventful. I was trying to think if there is anything, but no, I can't really nothing's popping in my head. But this past week here has been something else, because Roxana, who was on the show at one point, you know, she came back to visit, and she was here for 5 days. So, you know, I assumed during that time pretty much, you know, quite a bit of stuff I would kind of just let fall by the wayside, because, you know, again, we only have 5 days together. So it was, you know, like focus on that. And then it's like, well, I'll get back to other stuff afterward, you know. And
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. And it was great. I had a great time with her. Everything went well, you know. It's, you know, wish it was more time, but you know, what are you going to do? But the same day the day, before she came in, my mom's partner, boyfriend doesn't sound right, you know, given
partner.
Yeah, that's like 76 and 72 or whatever. It's like, yeah, you know, it just seems weird.
Yeah.
So we'll go with partner. But think he thought he had a heart attack. So, you know, of course we, you know, called 911, got him to the hospital and everything. And long story short on that, it's, you know, he ended up having to have a quadruple bypass, and everything went great. You know, I loved the way the doctor came in, because the doctor came in basically and was like, you know, he's a great candidate for what we want to do. I do these things all the time. I'm, you know, he's like, I'm nationally ranked. I've worked here. I've led this team. I've done, you know, and basically he's coming in just bragging about himself. But at the same time, it's like, you know, he's doing it to put people at ease. 'Cause, you know, then you feel like, hey, I've got the best, you know, I've got the right, you know, the right person doing this. And that's how I took it. Not everybody in the room saw it the same way. Some saw him just being cocky, and I'm like, no, he's basically walking in going, I got this. You know,
here's my resume.
Yeah, I got you, trust me, you know? And, you know, and, you know, of course, after the surgery went really well, everybody had nothing but good things to say about him.
Well, of course.
But I like the guy, 'cause, you know, like with me, it's like the two things I would need, and even being the, you know, family, is the way that I find comfort is in knowledge. You tell me what you're gonna do and why, and I'm cool with it. Like, okay, let's do it. You know, like I totally understand it. And there was a doctor that came in before him that did that, put a lot of stuff in layman's terms for everybody. And when he walked out, I was like, okay, you know, like totally understood what they were doing. I mean, it did also help. My dad had, you know, a quadruple bypass, so I knew some of the stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Except for a couple things that have been advanced, like, whoa, when they take the veins from your legs, they don't have to cut your leg from the groin to ankle anymore. There's just 2 little incisions, because they do it with a scope now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which is awesome, because, you know, like I said, my dad literally had a scar all down his leg from his. And the best part is that, you know, by having little scars, you know, it's less area to get infected. You know?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, like I said, everything went great. You know, he's home now. You know, still feels like a mule kicked him, but again, you know, that's how it's gonna be, because
it's pretty normal, yeah.
You know, it's kind of what happened. But yeah, I learned some stuff that I didn't know. Like, you know, my dad had this thing, I can't remember what they're called now. But it was this thing he had to like blow into, and like a ball raises in it kind of a thing, or a thing raises in it. And I didn't know what it was for. And this doctor told us that it's, during the surgery, your lungs collapse a little bit. So they have to get you to pop your lungs back. Kind of like if you had like a football and it was deflating, you know, you put the air tube up to it and pump, and it pops back out basically. Well, they can't do that because the risk of them blowing one of your lungs is too high. So you literally have to do it. And the way you do it is by blowing and by getting up and walking and, you know, making your body use the lungs. So I was like, I never knew that, but that's, you know, interesting that they do it. You know,
good to know.
Yeah, and one of the other things that happened that I was like during the time that I was kind of like, I had never thought of it that way. Was one of his daughters mentioned taking him to another hospital where there are specialists, you know, and the first doctor that came in was like, look, he's like, you know, you can take him wherever you want. I'm not here to like sell you on anything. You know, you go where you feel comfortable. And he goes, but he's like, I will say this. He's like, the specialists only do this kind of surgery every once in a while. They're used to doing heart transplants and the big stuff, you know?
Yeah.
He's like, we do at least 3 of these a day, you know? And he's like, which means we're constantly doing this. We are prepared for the aftercare because we do this all the time. You know, we have dedicated staff for the aftercare and all this kind of stuff. And I was thinking about it. I was like, that's interesting because usually, like, if someone said you can go to this place or you can go to a specialist, you're going to pick a specialist because you assume they're better.
Right.
But, and they may be a better doctor, air quote, better, you know, but at the same time, you've got somebody with a lot of experience doing this. That, and like I said, when that other doctor came in, was basically, oh yeah, no problem. We'll get in and out of there in 45 minutes. Apparently it took him 46. So he was slightly off.
Braggart.
Yeah. Well, he says it takes most other doctors an hour. He can get in and out in 45 minutes. And he said with no dip in quality. So,
nice.
Like I said, I like the guy. And like I was telling Tony yesterday, I said all I needed to know was when he walked in, I looked at his shoes and was like, those look expensive. And I was like, I'm pretty much good now. He had a couple expensive looking rings on and, you know, really, really nice looking shoes. So I was like, yeah, this guy's probably made a couple bucks doing this.
You want your doctor and your lawyer to drive very nice cars, not Yugos.
That's right. So, so anyway, you know, there's a whole lot more in there, but, you know, for anyone involved, I mean, if anyone wants to know or hear anything, you know, hit me up. I'll tell you, but it was pretty much just, you know, just that. And it's, you know, like watching his family as they, you know, were being told, you know, hey, he's going to have open heart and all this stuff. And, you know, of course they're, you know, understandably upset and nervous and all that. And, you know, and I was like, you know, my dad had it years ago. It went great. He felt like $1 million afterward, you know, so. And I figure here in a couple weeks, Jim probably will too, you know, he'll probably feel like $1 million, you know, once that initial pain of the stuff goes away. The surgeon actually told us, do you know the most of the pain afterward is not as much from the chest. He's like, cause we can give you really good stuff to stop the chest from hurting now. Apparently they've got this stuff that he used to work at the Cleveland Clinic and they use there, that when they put the collarbone or the breastbone back together, they essentially coat it with this stuff that is basically like a painkiller. So, so from the inside out it works instead of working outside in kind of a thing. And he said that significantly cuts down pain. And it doesn't make you like goofy or anything.
Yeah.
So I was like, cause I don't remember my dad having that, cause, you know, my dad's chest hurt pretty bad after his. And Jim's does too. But the doctor said that most of the time, more of the pain comes from the leg, especially like when my dad had it done, because there's nerves around those arteries or the veins or whatever that they're using. They have to essentially strip that down. So they basically, it's just like irritating it the whole time they're pulling the thing out. So I was like, all right. So yeah, it was funny because as they were talking, I'm standing there, I'm like, you know, like, like I'm soaking it up, like, oh, cool, tell me more, you know. And like I said, it's funny though, because it's like before my dad had his surgery, I watched an open heart surgery because they gave me a video and I watched it so that I could see what was going to happen and all this kind of stuff. And after watching it, I was like, okay, you know, like, you know, this is, it's a big deal, obviously, but this is no big deal. They got this, you know? So, it was interesting because I felt weird. And this is where this all comes way back around to the crazy life, which is, it felt weird because I'm pretty sure I was the most optimistic person in the room aside from the doctor.
Which is very interesting.
Right? Cause the doctor, I did love
Yeah.
this. The first surgeon that came in basically was like, if you ever meet a surgeon who doesn't think they're God, run. And I laughed at that, but it's true. If you don't walk in thinking you're the best, that's the wrong mindset for that job,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. And that's why I said it was very odd being the most positive person, I think, in the room for a little while there. And understandably so,
Sure.
I have experience with seeing it come out well, so had something gone horribly wrong, I'm sure I would have had a different opinion, but whatever.
How was your anxiety during all this time? I mean, that's a lot of upheaval in your life.
Yeah, honestly, it was pretty good because even though that was all going on, realistically, I was focusing more on the fact that Roxana was here.
I don't blame you. I would
so,
too. Yeah.
well, and again, it's like, we hadn't seen each other in, what was it, like 3 or 4 months now. And, again, we only have 5 days, so that's not a lot of time, so that really is more of what ended up happening, and, we did some stuff, took my mom food. I made sure, of course, I felt my job was to make sure she did self-care, cause there were a bunch of them up there. So as far as like consoling each other or anything like that, it's like, okay, you've got a clan up there, but it's like, I'm just going to make sure, did you take your medicine? Did you eat? Are you, come home because you need to sleep, even if it's only for 3 hours, you need sleep, Yeah. That kind of stuff. And, that's where I felt I was at my best, because that literally is probably the thing I'm best at, is that stuff. Making sure people do the stuff you forget during times of crises, and, I've done it for years with her and with other people. So, and it's just, I just slip right into that role. It's just who I become at that point. Like, we took her some, McDonald's, and she's sitting there and I didn't see her eating. And I'm like, Mom, she's like, what? And I'm like, eat. And then she's like, okay, so she starts eating. And at one point she stopped and I pointed at her and she started eating, my sister came up and saw me doing that, and she was cracking up at it because it was so, just like that. I'm not fooling around. Like, this isn't, I'm not going to let you not take care of yourself,
Self-care. You got to take care of yourself to be able to take care of others.
And it's so easy to forget stuff because your mind is so everywhere else, but I would just, also, like, the rest of them were eating. They were just going to the vending machines, getting snacks all the time. My mom's diabetic. She needs food, not salt
can't just
and
do snacks.
Sugar, So, and they had a cafeteria there. I'm told the cafeteria food was not great, but, but whatever. You need to eat, so.
Right.
But.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's, what's funny is, I've been constantly busy for the last roughly week and a half. Nothing was any one massive thing aside from the day he went to the hospital, but even then all I was doing was sitting in the waiting room,
Right.
I stayed out of the way, let his kids go back and visit with him and my mom to be back there. I just stayed in the waiting room and, I went in later, but it was, it was once he had a room, not in the emergency area. So that was pretty much, and again, I did the same thing that night with my mom, made sure she ate something, which, and took her medicine. So it's, that's the best part. She's taking good care of herself through this. So that's,
That's good.
Yeah. Cause otherwise it's like really, like, realistically, it's like, if you're ever going to go through something like this with someone, don't wear yourself out at the hospital while they're recovering. I mean, go do what you got to do, but make sure you practice all the self-care, because when they really need you is after. Like, once they go home, there's going to be things that you cannot do, like Jim's got a dog, he can't take her outside because she, she's good about going outside and stuff, but she's got her hips bugging her a little bit. So she doesn't like the stairs. So sometimes you have to carry her up or down, and he literally can't do that right now. Just little stuff like that. Which will be fine in a few weeks. It'll get better and all that. But for the first little bit of time, you need help with some stuff that you wouldn't think about, Because I remember my dad with that. Like I said, he felt like $1 million. The next day, the day after his surgery, I went and saw him, and I was like, "How do you feel?" And he's like, "I feel 15 years younger." And he's like, "If it wasn't for the feeling like I got kicked in the chest by a horse," he's like, "I feel like I could go do anything." So yeah. But like I said, everything went great. That's all that matters. He seems to be doing really well now. So, we're fortunate and very happy. Yeah.
Very cool.
I feel like there was something else with me, but I can't remember what it was. So, like I said, real up and down week for me.
Absolutely. And it's great that you were able to stay fairly even keels during everything.
I really was, actually. Yeah, I was.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Now, in fairness, as much as I like him, he's been a part of our life for a while. He's not my dad or my he's not,
Right.
So that, of course, is going to help a little bit, but at the same time, I didn't freak out or anything, so.
Yeah. Which is awesome.
Yeah. Like I said, I know there was something else I was going to mention, but I can't remember it. So I guess that'll be good enough.
All right. Well, everything's been going pretty good. I had one situation at work that I wanted to mention. There was someone who works with me that, I guess he indirectly works for me, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
So he doesn't report to me. He reports to my boss.
Okay.
But I'm higher up than he is.
Okay. That's kind of weird, but okay.
Yes. So we both report to this. It's interesting, but
yeah.
Basically he yelled at me and was inappropriate by yelling at me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to, instead of retaliating, I just pulled my manager to the side and said, "This is not happening again. I will not be talked to in that manner."
Yeah.
Especially by someone who's my subordinate.
Yeah.
And needs to, and if there's any issue with my performance or anything that I'm doing that you feel we need to talk about, I would be more than happy to have that conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't cry, didn't get upset.
Good.
Just laid it flat out and just said, and he looked at me and he said, "You know what? You're right. It was inappropriate." He said, "I'll have a talk with him." I said, "Good." And I said, like I said, "I'm very open to change. I'm very, very open to hear what you have to say. If you have an issue with the way I'm performing, by all means, I would love to sit down and talk with you and we can work it out."
Or if nothing else, at least talk to your boss about it,
Right.
Appropriate.
Well, he is my boss.
Yeah.
So,
No. I was meaning
the other guy has an issue.
Yeah. Like appropriate channels, or chain of command concept,
Yeah. He does not get to stand in the middle of the warehouse and yell at me.
Right. Nobody really, in my opinion, gets that. No one gets that right. I have a hard time with anyone. I don't care if they are my boss. I'd still be like, this is not appropriate. If you want to discipline me he can't discipline you because he's not above you, but you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. So it was one of those things that, so I was very proud of myself by holding it together.
Good.
I didn't get teary. I called it out and I said, "Nope." I said, "We're not doing this. I'm not sweeping it under the rug, but I'm not going to overreact about it either."
Mm-hmm.
I just called it out, handled it, and we moved on.
Which is good. I'm glad, like you said, the key part there to me is like, you also didn't just let it go. You know,
Yes,
you didn't
exactly.
just, you know, take it and then walk away. You were like, hey, this isn't cool. I'm not going to accept this. So, yeah, that's important.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie. I did bother. It stuck with me for a while and longer than it probably should have. And I was very anxious about going back to work after that happened because of ramifications of my actions and, you know, having to go through every single scenario through my head of what if this is said, then what if this is happening, if that would, you know, all of the scenarios. I had to run through each and every one of them.
Of course.
I had to run through them to completion,
Right.
of course.
Well, you know, again, if you're going to run through, you know, to completion, it can be used in a positive manner. Like I've mentioned on here before about, you know, how my therapist does that. Like when I'll tell her something, be like, well, I was afraid of this. And she'll be like, well, let's see it through. And she'll walk it all the way through and be like, see, you're fine, basically, you know, so.
Yeah.
You know, it can
and
be
that's kind of
used.
what I was trying to do.
Yeah, it's like that wouldn't be so bad. Now, if you're running it through simply so that you have perfect comebacks for everything you anticipate, that's another story. That's no good.
Well, there was a little bit of that too. So there's, you know, a little bit of both. But I'm like, okay, I can handle this. If this happens, this is what's going to happen. I can do this and I will be fine. And so every scenario I kept coming back to, I'm like, I'm going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And turns out absolutely nothing was said ever again about it so far. And everything was kosher.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, cool beans.
Yeah. Well,
So-
that's the thing is like realistically from your boss saying, I'll take care of it kind of a thing. The only real thing you could appropriately hear after that would be, hey, just wanted to let you know I took care of things, you know, like, cause obviously, you know, you shouldn't comment to one person about disciplinary actions or whatever, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, and of course I did put an open invitation to criticize my work to my boss, but that kind of goes without saying.
Right.
It's always an open invitation.
Well, I was just going to say,
boss.
yeah, exactly. I was going to say they're the boss.
Yeah.
They can, yeah, that's part of the gimmick. So.
They can do it anytime. So, you know. So if that was going to happen, it was going to happen and I could handle it.
Well, like, yeah, because, you know, criticizing your work is one thing. If it gets personal or like you said, if it gets to like yelling, you know, those are not appropriate communication styles, you know, like those are not okay, you know, so yeah.
Exactly.
Good. I'm glad you took care of it.
Yeah. So that was a big thing. And the other big thing, well, I'm currently actually in Florida right now, which is very cool. I'm visiting my mom and my stepdad, which is awesome as always. Love visiting with them. So just kind of coming down just to check on things, make sure everybody's doing good and, you know, and then handle maybe some health issues if necessary. But so far things are going well. And, yeah, it's fun. Anxiety, of course, with travel always comes up. Overpacking, which is a big thing of mine.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Overpacking's a huge thing. I'm here for 3 days and I have 7 outfits.
Well, you never know when you have to, you know, do a quick costume change, you know.
You never know.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
in fairness, obviously, you know, even though you're there for 3 days, you know, like when I always pack, you know, an extra day or so, but also, you know, you make sure that it's like, well, I'm going to take some, you know, something, like really nice just in case we go somewhere that's, you know, a little upscale or something, you know, so it's, yeah, it makes sense. You know. Yeah.
So, you know, I have, you know, 3 more casual outfits and 3 that are a little bit nicer outfits. You know, and then I've got my, if it happens to turn really cold outfit, which it's Florida, the odds of it turning really cold are probably not that great.
I don't know, you know, I've seen some stuff over the last few weeks where there's been some like 50-degree days and stuff, so, you know.
Exactly. So, and it's supposed to be 60s all week, so which isn't the warmest of warm, but.
No, but I'd take it.
Yeah, exactly.
We're looking at potentially like 6
Michigan.
inches of snow this weekend, so, yeah.
Yes. So, but things are good. Things are good. You know, and then the flight, I flew Frontier, And I will say that it's been one of the more enjoyable flights that I've experienced.
Really?
So, yes. So I would highly recommend Frontier. Seats are nice and comfortable. I had leg room, which are two things you don't hear very often when you refer to airplane rides, especially discount flights, because they are known as a discount airline. And, you know, the people were really nice. We didn't have a full plane, so we were, once the plane was in the air, we were able to spread out, which was cool too.
Yeah.
So that also made it a little bit nicer because the people next to me wanted to move, so I was like, sweet. And I had a row to myself.
Right? Yeah. Nice. Both
Right?
armrests. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Both armrests. So, you know, even though I was still anxious, because I'm always anxious about going on an airplane, it was very enjoyable, and I would definitely, I'm going to be looking to them to probably fly them again.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they go to Roxanne or not, but it's something to look into.
Okay. Yeah.
Just as an FYI.
Right.
But, yes. So other than that, in my little commercial for Frontier,
Right.
I guess that's it. So what we're going to talk about this week, I guess I'll toss it over to you because I think you said you brought it up on the Twitter.
Yeah. Let's see, what was it? Sorry, I scrolled down. I have to. The name of this, it's from Forbes.com. And, you know, of course, this will be in the show notes. And it's how to declutter your mind. 10 practical tips you'll actually want to try. Which, you know.
Yes. We know how cluttered it gets upstairs.
Right. Yeah. Where'd it go? Sorry. Okay. The first one on here is set priorities. It says famous American poet Bill Copeland had rightly said, "The trouble with not having a goal is that you can spend your life running up and down the field and never score." Prioritizing is a great way to proactively take charge of your life. The first steps to figure out what the things that matter the most to you, your life aspirations, and your long-term goals. Prepare a list of your top priorities and make sure that your actions and decisions you take reflect the priorities you set. The next step is to create an action plan to meet those goals, or meet those set goals, and to work on how you want to divide your time to focus on each item on that list. It's important to note that your list of priorities might change as you grow older, and that's totally okay as long as you check in with yourself regularly and ensure those priorities are still serving you. Which is true, you know, and I've also seen it said to where, you know, like once you've set your goals and stuff, it's to set your action list to where basically everything on that list is moving you toward your goal. And if you have to adjust, you know, like a week in, 2 weeks in, you know, whatever, but that part of it should, you know, can be a constantly, like that said, you know, a constantly evolving thing to where maybe that's not your goal anymore. So maybe it's time for a new list, or maybe, you know, you need to kind of take a step, you know, to the side before you can move forward a little bit, you know, whatever. But if you're always moving towards your goal, you're moving. That's kind of the key, you know, you're not standing still.
Absolutely. And prioritizing is such a great way to really break free from all the, I mean, you overuse the word clutter, but it is to break free from all that clutter, all the extra stuff that's going on. If you can focus on just one or two items and just break it down, it's like, you know, this is what's most important to me right now is getting this straight. All of a sudden, everything else kind of fades out and it's not nearly as stressful.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, plus, you know, and of course it definitely helps. Like if you're looking at a to-do list, like if you just wrote down a bunch of stuff, but you haven't prioritized it, you're going to look and go, oh, geez, I have 20 things to do. Instead of going, I need to do this. Once I'm done with this, then I need to do, you know, like you step through it. You know, and as we've mentioned before, you know, even if you have to with like a list thing like this, you know, even if you have to break it down to its simplest, you know, part, if that's what it takes to get you going, then, by all means do that. Don't overlook that concept. There's nothing wrong with splitting a normal, air quote, task into like 4 smaller tasks, because that's how you need it to be to accomplish it. Don't worry about if that's what other people do or not. Number 2 is keep a journal. Journaling's a great way to relax your mind by analyzing and organizing your thoughts. According to research published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology, expressive writing eliminates intrusive thoughts about negative events and improves working memory. Researchers believe that these improvements may, in turn, free up our cognitive resources for other mental activities, including the ability to manage stress more effectively. Writing in a daily journal can also help manage anxiety and cope with depression, as it's a healthy outlet to release bottled emotions, which, I've talked about that in the past too. The one last line in here that I really liked was, you don't have to be a prolific writer to start a journal. For beginners, bullet journaling is one of the easiest techniques to try out. You just, basically, the way when I was doing it, pretty much what I did was I didn't try to worry about anything except just getting thoughts out of my head, much like a brainstorming concept. It's like you just put all your ideas out there and then you can edit if you want to. But in a journal, you don't really need to edit, You're just trying to get stuff out of your head. So, that was the way I always approached it. And it worked really well for me. That and my, at the end of it, I'd always put, one good thing that happened to me that day or something, one thing that made me happy / smile, whatever, So that way it forces you to have at least one positive thought on your day,
Well, it also helps when you're trying to do a weekend review and just kind of going back and you can see all the good things that happened. Because a lot of times we'll remember the bad stuff. We don't remember the good stuff. So sometimes you need that reminder. But it's just journaling. You sometimes, if you have to get it out of your head for you not to obsess on it anymore. And journaling, writing it down is a big way of doing it. Doing a video journal can also work if it's easier for you just to talk it out versus writing it out. Because sometimes with, modern technology, people don't like writing as much or typing. There you go. You can type and talk.
Yeah, really.
But just getting the thoughts and ideas out.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, like, any way, that it works for you, Oh, let's see. Number 3, learn to let go. Accept yourself, love yourself, and keep moving forward. If you want to fly, you have to give up what weighs you down, writes author Roy T. Bennett in his book, The Light in His Heart. I don't think that's scientifically accurate, but it is important to let go of all the negative thoughts and emotions that make you feel bogged down. Eliminating unnecessary thoughts, fears, and concerns help reduce stress, boost self-esteem, and free up mental space. Monitor your thoughts regularly and try to replace your negative thoughts with positive ones. Yep, this one, it's the, we've said the words so many times on here, let go or be dragged. And, it's always gonna sound weird to say that you gain more control of your life when you let go of things. Because it's like, well, how can I get more control by not controlling?
Yes,
but
it's
the
amazing.
Truth. Yeah, and it does. It allows you to feel so much better. Yeah.
And by giving things to others is another great way of letting go. Is trust. That's where a lot of it comes down to, is trust, and trusting somebody else to do things. Maybe they're not going to be the same way you do it. Maybe it's not even as good as you do it. Who knows? Maybe it's better. But by giving trust to somebody else to do something, it'll so freeing. It'll just make it so much better. Yeah.
And it's, plus, there's so many times that we just worry about things we have no control of, and, letting those things go, just because we've all done it. We've all worried about something we absolutely have zero control over. And, sometimes like, a little anxiety is perfectly, normal, if you want to call it that, whatever, But some of the worries that a lot of us have had are not. And it's just, we just need to, again, all you can control is, your part of something. That's it. You can't control people's reactions or any of this other stuff. So it's really not worth, keeping yourself up at night over it or having, anxiety attacks because of you're too worried about how people are going to think of you or whatever, you just let it go, it just, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And also letting go is something, pretty much anyone with anxiety and control issues, if they go to a therapist, that's going to be one of the first things you're told is you need to learn to let go. It's just like, you can drive a car without white knuckling it, and that's really, it's the same with life and stuff too. You can loosen your grip and still control things just fine,
Exactly. In fact, better.
Yeah, really. Number 4 on here is avoid multitasking. I know, it sounds counterproductive, but trust me, preparing that office presentation while updating your Instagram and looking for a secret Santa gift online for your roommate is not that helpful. While there's no harm in occasional multitasking, constant juggling between tasks limits your attention span, increases stress, and creates additional clutter by making it difficult for your brain to filter out irrelevant information. In fact, a study conducted by Stanford shows that heavy multitasking lowers efficiency and may impair your cognitive control. The solution is to single task as much as possible. Make a list of things you need to accomplish that day. Keep the list simple and realistic. Start with what's most important and make your way down, completing one task at a time. That one's so true. There's so many things I've read about how, like when you multitask, each time you move from one to the other, you stop. And basically when people are working, essentially you kind of gain momentum, So when you stop, in order to get back to your peak efficiency, it takes, I think the average was something like 15 or 20 minutes every time you stop. So if you're constantly bouncing between tasks, essentially you're lowering your efficiency across time. No one ever believes it because they always think they're getting stuff done faster. But it's 9 times out of 10 not true. That you can get things done faster and you'll be paying better attention the other way, So like it said, it really can help keep your anxiety down by doing one thing at a time,
I can feel a huge difference when I'm trying to multitask. My anxiety goes flying up. I can definitely tell.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, right? You're trying to accomplish multiple things at one time instead of just one task. If you're laser focused on one thing, you see it through, you're like, cool, boom, that's off the list. Next thing, boom, that's off the, when you're bouncing between two, it might be all day before you can cross anything off your list. So you don't get that instant gratification, that completion, So there's all those little things to consider in there too that, I don't know. I just, don't get me wrong. I'm sure all of us multitask, whether we want to, mean to, whatever. We've all done it.
Well, sure. It's part of being it. Yeah. Being human. We all do it.
Especially anyone who's, especially anyone who's a parent, you pretty much your whole life is multitasking. But when you can focus just on one thing, that's the best thing. It's similar to like, oh, I'm going to read and watch a TV show. You're generally not paying attention to full attention to either one. And after doing both activities, you might be like, why can't I remember what I read? Or why can't I remember that show?
Right.
It's because you're distracted.
Exactly.
The next one is breathe. Take a deep breath.
Our favorite.
Yep. Pause. Exhale slowly. Repeat. How does it feel? Great, right? Deep breathing is a simple yet effective technique to clear your mind, induce tranquility, and elevate your mood instantly. It lowers the heart rate and blood pressure and stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps your body relax. Other than being a stress reliever, breathing exercises also promote concentration and strengthen your immunity system. You know, like we've said on here countless times, we've talked about breathing and we've talked about breathing and we've talked about breathing.
Oxygen is good, y'all.
Yeah. Well, also that whole, you know, as we talked before, my thing with breathing was always like the movie For the Love of the Game. You know, it's clear the mechanism. You know, that's,
yep.
I'll close my eyes, take a deep breath, and then be like, okay, let's go. You know, like, let's do this, you know, just completely wipe everything out of your head as, you know, best you can. And then, you know, get a good running start from that point. So, and I use it all the time. It was one of the first things I was taught about in therapy. And it's probably the thing I use the most I've learned in therapy, you know. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean like, obviously we all breathe, you know, normally, but I'm meaning when you're
you
focusing,
have to breathe to live, sure.
Yeah, focusing, you know, on your breathing or whatever.
Yeah.
The next one, declutter your workspace. Did you know that people with a messy workspace are less efficient and more frustrated than those who have an organized work desk? Well, now you do. So don't put it off till tomorrow. Declutter your workspace ASAP. You can start by getting rid of all the non-essential items and assigning a proper place to everything. The best way to keep things organized without feeling overwhelmed or exhausted is to clean up your work desk every day before you go home.
5S. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a business technique that was developed, I believe, in Japan, if I'm not mistaken, but it's part of the Six Sigma methodology of management and in lean operations. And 5S'ing is there's a space for everything and everything in its place. Mm-hmm. So everything is marked. Everything you put, like the stapler has its own space called stapler. And when you finish using this, it goes back to the stapler space. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's very methodological. If that's a word. I think I made up a word.
I think you did.
Anywho, you guys get what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So it's a real easy way to just be very, very, very organized. Sometimes it's a little too organized for my creative brain. Mm-hmm. I need to have a little less structure sometimes, but I get it. It does make things much easier when you don't have to race around trying to find things. Yeah.
You know, it's funny. Like my desk is always a mess. It always has been, probably always will be. You know, I get to a point at some point where I'm like, I should clean this, and then I'll clean stuff up. But I don't stress about it. It really doesn't make me stressful. It's never bothered me. Because I still, even though it's a mess, I know what's on my desk. You know? Mm-hmm. Like right now I'm looking and I got papers all over the place. I can pretty much tell you exactly what's in each of the piles on my desk. You know? Gotcha. So it's like in my head, everything is in its place. And the place is somewhere on the desk. You know?
You have your own organization skills. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I said it's always weird for me though. And I know, I've read plenty of things that say that, you know, like creative people tend to have messy workspaces, you know, that's pretty common. But yeah, I think, you know what it is? I think a lot of it's kind of like, I don't make my bed every day. Because in my head, I'm like, why? I'm just going to mess it up again. I'm kind of that way about my desk. It's like, why keep it perfectly clean when I'm just going to move stuff back there tomorrow? You know, it's like, I might as well just leave it where it belongs. And, you know, once it's no longer useful, then it goes into a different place. But, you know, but that doesn't work for everybody. And honestly, who knows? Maybe if I organize my desk more frequently, maybe I'd be more productive. Who knows? I don't think so, but who knows?
Never know.
Yeah. I'm very open about the fact that I'm not going to find out. So.
True.
Yeah. I mean, you've known me a long time. You know, my desk is always a mess. But again, I do know where everything is on my desk. You know, it's rare I lose something or can't find something that was on my desk unless someone else moves it.
Yes.
Yeah. The weird stuff to me was always like, have you ever, like, whether it's work or whatever, like, you know, when you have to share a workspace with somebody, that's when it gets frustrating. Because, you know, on my desk, nobody needs to know where anything is on my desk generally, you know, because I know where it is. And I'm the one who uses the desk, you know, but when you share a workspace, like, you know, I worked at the video store, we had the manager's office, and on the manager's desk, you know, we kept everything really clean. And, you know, a couple of people that worked there were not good at that. So, you know, I'd come in and it wasn't clean, and I'm like, you know, now I gotta put your stuff away that I'm not gonna use. If it's stuff I'm gonna use, who cares? You know? Like you were saying, the stapler, if it's left out, not in a wherever space, but it's just kind of left on the desk, I'm like, I'm gonna be using it a little bit anyway, you know, whatever. But it gets frustrating because you have to stop, put stuff away so that you can then have that space to work with, you know? So, yeah. That's the only time, I was just thinking about it, I was like, that's the only time that a disorganized desk frustrated me.
Yeah, I mean, I share a desk, and it is really important.
Yeah.
You have to keep that organized when you're sharing a desk.
Yeah. Yeah, because it really is terrible when you have somebody who's, like, if I took my at-home desk mentality to work, people would hate me. Because, you know, there's always the people who are like, no, things go in their home, you know? And I'm like, the desk is the home, you know? I like to let my office supplies roam free.
Free range
Yeah,
office.
free range, yeah. All right, number 7 on here is be decisive. Professional organizer Scott Rohrer has rightly put it, clutter is simply delayed decisions. When you constantly put off making decisions, your brain becomes overwhelmed by all the clutter that's created by those pending decisions. Stop procrastinating and make that call, whether it's about the house you want to buy or that email you've been avoiding for so long. For simple decisions, carefully evaluate the pros and cons and don't look back once you've made up your mind. You know, which is, again, something we've talked about on here too, is, you know, you just make the best decision you can make with the information you have at the time. You know, a year down the road, you might look back and go, wow, I was really not smart there. But at the time, you're like, well, I probably make that decision again because it's, you know, it's at the time it seemed like the right move.
And you can't harass yourself about decisions that you make after the fact.
Right.
You know, you gotta, you know, you make the best decision you can given the circumstances that you make the decision and the information you have at the time you made that decision. Now, after the fact, you can't go back and say, well, should I? No. You made the best decision. You have to stand behind your decision and defend yourself and say, no, I'm defending myself to myself. I'm not going to attack myself over something that I made a decision on.
Right. What always pops into my head is Rafiki. You know, doesn't matter. It's in the past. You know?
Exactly. But it still hurts.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Sometimes the past can hurt. That always pops in my head when this kind of stuff comes up, because it really is, it's really how I've become, how I look at stuff like that now. Because I used to beat myself up really bad for a lot of that stuff. And now, you know, the more you don't do that, and you're just like, it doesn't matter if I made a bad decision. I can't change that decision. You know, I'm here now. So now all I can do is do the best I can now. In 2 minutes, maybe I'll look back and go, wow, that was a dumb decision. But right now it seems like the right move, you know, and that's really all you can do, you know? So,
that's exactly it.
Yeah. But they're right. Like, being decisive allows, you know, it's, or like, go, you know, choosing where you're going to have dinner or what you're going to eat at a restaurant. You know, when you're like, geez, there's like 7,000 things here. It's like, just pick one, you know?
Yep.
Because no matter what you pick, there's a likelihood that you'll go, I should have got this instead. you know, especially if there's a bunch
Yeah.
of different options, you know. That actually happened the other day when I was out with Roxana. I was like, well, here's the stuff around us as far as places to go to eat, you know. And, you know, she's like, you know, she was like, wow, all of that sounds good. And then she was like, well, how about this? And then we went, you know, to that place, and she, you know, and I was like, oh, well, we could do this instead, kind of, you know. And she goes, no, I've already got my mindset like on this, like we're already moving that way, basically. And it's like, that's the attitude, you know, is even though, yeah, maybe if we had stopped and gone somewhere else, maybe we would have had a better dinner, but we had a perfectly fine dinner, and we can always do the other later or something, you know. So it's, like I said, she just made a decision and we went, you know. It was
Nice. Decisive.
yeah, that way you're not obsessing over it all day, you know, or for an hour, you know. An hour later, you're like, we need to eat. Why have we not decided where we're eating? You know, like, and I know anyone listening has probably been through that at least 1 or 100 times in their life.
Oh, yeah, you're not kidding.
Yeah. So, yeah. Number 8, share your thoughts. Talking to a loved one about how you feel is a great way to release pent-up emotions. Sharing your thoughts with others can also help you look at things from a fresh perspective, which can help you think clearer and make better decisions. Agreed.
And if you do not have a family member or friend to do this with, get a therapist. Because there's always somebody. There's the helplines, there's the counseling lines, there's the find a therapist, there's a bunch of different outlets, but this is so incredibly important. Don't let things fester in your head. Get them out loud, and just put them out into the universe and let them go.
Yeah. And, you know, make sure that when you are, you know, like, don't look for people that you're talking to make up your mind for you. You know, again, make your decision. And most of the time when people are like, hey, I want to run something by you, most of the time people have already kind of decided or are heavily leaning, you know, toward something. And you're just kind of like, I just want to make sure there's not some outside the box thing I'm missing, you know, type deal. But don't basically, you know, this happened and this happened. What should I do? You know, and it's like, cause that's many times not for anyone to decide but yourself, you know. But sharing your thoughts, talking things out, that kind of stuff, that's great, you know. Cause again, you never know. You may be like, I'm 100% this way. This is what's going on. And somebody might go, well, hold on. You didn't consider this. And, you know, they may save you from making a really bad decision. You know?
Absolutely.
You know, yeah, but definitely don't keep things in. You know, I'm talking, you know, we're talking to everybody, but I'm especially looking at all the guys that listen. You know,
absolutely.
Stop, you know, don't be, you know, bravo and macho man. I mean, literally a perfect reason for it is, and this I'm sure is super common, is, you know, like Jim, he had been dealing with chest pains for a while. I'm fine. Then finally it was like, you know, holy crap, call 911. And luckily it wasn't, you know, a catastrophic heart attack or something, but he had let it go long enough that it made the surgery more complicated, you know. So don't do that, because, you know, especially not with a heart attack. If you think you're having a heart attack, call for help, or, you know, try not to drive yourself, because that's, you know, that could turn out bad. But, you know, try to get help. And same with this, you know, just don't hold it in. Talk with somebody. And like Jen said, you know, if you don't have someone else you feel like you can talk to, or even if you do, you know, like I've said on here before, you know, talking with the therapist is a whole different beast than talking with anybody else, because you just, there are no bad ideas essentially when you're talking with your therapist. You know, they're just gonna hear you out, you know. I mean, of course, unless it's, you know, like, hey, I'm thinking about harming myself or others, then yeah, they would certainly say something there.
Well, sure.
I hope, you know. I
would hope so too.
If not, they're not very much of a therapist. Number Number 9, limit the amount of media intake. The media you consume has a huge impact on your mental health. We spend hours online reading blogs, managing Pinterest boards, watching viral videos on YouTube. What's really funny, I really barely do any of those things. I don't read very many blogs. I don't use Pinterest at all. And I'm one of the few people who, like, the only time I look at YouTube pretty much is if someone sends me a link.
Nice. I'm the same way.
Or
though.
if I'm looking for something, like, it's like, how to this, you know, that if you look, if I had a search, like, the history for me on Yahoo, or I'm sorry, YouTube would be, you know, how to, and fill in the blank. This abundance of information can clog your brain, causing stress and anxiety. Limiting the amount of information you consume is necessary to get rid of all that media-related clutter from your mind. You can start by setting a limit on the amount of time you spend on social media. Also, be selective about your media consumption. Avoid negative content, follow only reliable media outlets for news updates, etc., and organize your email regularly. I've read and heard so many people talking about this. There's been so many things popping up on the different sites I look over, looking for like stories and whatever that are all mental health based or neurological based or whatever, that have constantly been like, you need to get off Facebook. You need to stop spending all day on Instagram. You need, you know, like this kind of stuff. And, you know, the news one is a really good one, because if you follow, you know, like I don't want to follow any news organization that basically yells. I don't want one that's constantly just berating one side or the other. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff, because that's setting a tone, you know, and that's not the person I want to be. I don't want to yell at people. I don't want to, you know, with this stuff. So I avoid it, you know?
Yeah.
But I've also heard, like, on Tim Ferriss's podcast, he talks about how he gets up in the morning and he checks his email for X amount of time. Once he's done with it, that's it. He doesn't go through all day constantly checking his email. That's it. He's done.
That's smart.
You know, that way he's not spending all day doing it. He's, okay, I'm in here. I'm done. I've done it for an hour or whatever his time frame is. I'm done. Anything that comes in can wait till tomorrow, type of a thing.
Nice.
You know, and I've read, like, Adam Ruins Everything, the podcast, Adam Conover has talked about with his Facebook. He actually put an app, I think it's an app on his phone that he can set limits on different apps.
Oh, nice.
So he only allows himself a certain amount of time on Facebook. And because he realizes, like a lot of people are realizing, that across the board, Facebook is a very negative experience for most people. You know,
it can be.
Or it's just not good for you, you know, which we talked about in a very early episode of the show, if I'm not mistaken. You know, but it's so funny how people, it's like, here's social media. And then people are like, oh, this isn't bad. Then it's like, we want all the social media. And social media, of course, goes, well, by all means, here's all this. And you know what? We're going to keep giving you more and more within this. And we're just like eating it up. We just cannot get enough of it until we finally hit a certain point to where people are like, I want less of this, you know? And now there's a niche for, you know, like that app. Like that app should not have to exist. We should be able to just go, I'm not going to use Facebook.
Right,
but
exactly.
People
you shouldn't
can't.
have to have the time limit set.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to
a
basically
babysitter.
Yeah, have a parental code on your phone. You know,
exactly.
You know,
how old are we, folks?
Right?
But yet it is important, and I'm notoriously bad about being on my phone all the time.
Yep. Same thing with sleep. You know, you're like, oh, here's a smartphone. You're like, oh, I'll look at this occasionally. And then next thing you know, it's like, I'll look at this a little bit before bed. Next thing you know, every hour you're waking up and looking at your phone to make sure you didn't miss any messages. And then you get like 2 hours of sleep. And then the next day you're like, wow, I feel like hot garbage. And then start looking at your phone again.
Exactly.
You know, like these are things that, you know, overconsumption of anything, not just media, but, you know, just overconsumption of anything generally makes you feel worse, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, be careful with that stuff, you know? Especially the social media stuff. It's so funny. I've barely been on my social media this last week with Roxana in town. And today I went to look at Twitter and I was just like meh. You know, like it's amazing how taking a few days kind of really stepping back, how when you look at it again, like it's like, you know, I'm almost at like that crossroad of I might be able to just walk away from this, but
But can I completely walk away?
Right. But that grass is so green over there. Yeah. Oh, I won't. I mean, no, I won't, but it's every time I do it, I do try to limit myself and then eventually it gets out of control and
yeah, it goes back to the way it was.
right. And I run in loops like this though. I'll hit a point where I'm like, I'm kind of done with social media for a while, you know, and I'll still be on it, but I'll just be really, here and there with it. And, then it just gets more and more eventually until I hit that again to where I'm like, oh, this is too much. And then just go back to, I don't delete apps or any of that stuff. I just, it's funny.
Social media cycle.
Yeah. Number 10 here is take some time to unwind. Last but not least, take a break. Your brain needs to rest and recharge in order to perform smoothly. So switch off your phones and laptops and do something that makes you feel happy, whether it's a long nap or a walk in the park. Again, that's something I thought was really interesting. Tim Ferriss has talked about doing is when he takes his dog for a walk, he doesn't take his phone with him. That way he cannot look at his phone. And he's talked about how he does that sometimes when he goes out with friends for like dinner or something like that. He'll just leave his phone at home. And he does it that way. There's 100% guarantee he can't be on his phone all night, ignoring his friends. Most of us are not going to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't think I could do that.
Now,
kudos to him.
And he doesn't have kids. So, that there is that, people with kids, it's a little harder, even though, a lot of people be like, well, people used to go out all the time without cell phones, but it's like, yeah, but we're all so intertwined in them now that, it's not the way it was, so it's hard to go back to that.
Absolutely.
But like with him, he's single, so he can do that, And odds are most of the notifications and stuff he gets are probably business related. So it's probably something he really doesn't want to deal with anyway, while he's out with his friends or while he's walking his dog or whatever,
Yeah, I can see that being very true.
Yeah. The dog walking one I especially like because a lot of people, we all take our phones to so many things for like the most mundane things now. Like nobody goes to the bathroom without their phone anymore. Whereas
oh yeah, exactly.
Before smartphones were a big deal, if you had been like, hey, I'm going to take my phone into the bathroom, people would be like, ew, now it's like,
yeah, exactly.
You say, hey, I'm going to go to the bathroom and be like, do you want your phone? Like people will ask you if you want your phone, it's mind blowing to me.
Yeah. We're such creatures of habits.
Yeah.
Once to that habit.
Yep.
And trying to break it. Holy moly.
Yeah. It's something. But yeah, definitely, I was just reading something earlier that said, there's some study that says that even 5 minutes in nature improves your overall mood and feelings and stuff, So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and again, by getting out in nature, they don't mean walking and staring at your phone while you're going for a walk. They mean, taking in what you see.
Exactly.
A good way to do that is if you're fighting the urge to, pull your phone out is, kind of like a grounding technique, where, basically you describe to yourself, like in your own head, you describe every little thing that you see, that way, again, you focus on being in the now,
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So, again, I mean, it's not something I practice. I'm just saying I've heard that it works.
Seems like a really good idea.
Yeah. But yeah, not, like I said, not just media, this just applies to everything. Again, overconsumption's a bad thing. You know, don't sit and watch 6 hours of Netflix without at least getting up at some point. You know?
Yes, exactly. Get up, stretch, walk around, break the eyesight for a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, focus your eyes somewhere that's not a screen for a few minutes. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, same with your phone, same with, I mean, even at work, you know, I've said that to people before. It's like, just every once in a while, if you have to get up, just, even if it's just walk to the bathroom or a drinking fountain or to the coffee machine, just, whatever you need to do, just for even if it's just for a couple minutes, it changes your, what you're looking at. It gives you a break. What I find myself having to take breaks from is when I'm anywhere that has like a constant like cloud of noise.
Yes.
Like my ears need a break at some point. And, I've found actually when I was at the hospital, the first night, I had to do that a few times because everybody in there is talking. Plus the hospital's just kind of got its own noise to it. And it was it just didn't stop. And, so I'd go outside where there was no noise, and it's like, oh, there we go. Staying outside for a couple minutes and then come back in and, just need that quick break. Golden. Yeah. Well, I just need that quick break, and then it was like, okay. Yeah. And it's amazing how just like a couple minutes outside, like I felt refreshed coming back in because it was, my ears and my brain were like, like, there's nothing to process out here, just other than it's cold.
It is Michigan.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I think that was a pretty good list.
Yep. Me too.
Awesome. Well, folks, you know what time it is. If you'd like to continue the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure.
No, sorry. It just hit me that I didn't pull up the thing that I usually have that has different links and stuff in there, so I remember them.
Oh, gotcha. Well, folks, if you'd like to continue the conversation with us, you can reach us at The Crazy Life at Outlook.com. Wait a minute, that didn't seem right.
Crazy Life Podcast at Outlook.com. That's our email.
Thank you. The Crazy Life Podcast at Outlook.com for email. The Crazy Life Podcast.weebly.com for our website. You can reach me on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life. That's Jen with a G. Or my alt account, which is Dits with D-Tits. So you can reach me on either one of those. You can also check out my other podcast. If you want to hear more from me, you can reach out and listen to Shake the Sheets. It's on all the platforms. And you, Brian, how can they reach you?
You can also find the show on Twitter at The Crazy Life Pod, where I post when new episodes go up. You can find me at Stunami. You can find my other podcast at salty_language or at saltylanguage.com. That show is not safe for work, so, please be careful with whose ears are around. You can find Henno on Twitter at IdaHenno, and you can find Henno's other podcast at Gotham Lights. Gotham, like the TV show, but they're going to be doing Gotham and Orville, the Orville, both through this year, so, depending on when you download it, it may depend on what they're talking about. Excuse me. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/crazylifepodcast. We're pretty much anywhere you normally get podcasts if, same with, all of our other shows, We are part of Danger Entertainment, which can be found at dangerentertainment.net. And we're also part of the Tangibound Network, which can be found at tangiboundnetwork.com. So please go check out those sites. And, there's a bunch of shows on both of them. So, you may find some other stuff that you like. I feel like I'm missing a link here. Oh, well. All the links are in the show notes anyway, so if, there is something I've forgotten, you can find them in there, no problem. So, if you're, feeling as though you may hurt yourself or others, please, as we always say, please reach out and ask for help. There's tons of people out there to help you. You just have to let them know you need the help. And please reach out to to different people in your life. Just, ones you haven't seen for a while, ones are going through something rough. Just anybody, honestly, even the ones that tell you they're okay. 'Cause again, we all know, oh, I'm fine is the favorite mask of depression. So, so do that. And what am I forgetting? I know I'm forgetting like a major one here. I really feel like there's like a section of this part of the show that I'm just not saying, and I can't think of what it is. So, because it's been 2 weeks and I haven't. Anyway, I know I always say, be nice to people. Let's just all try to put better energy out into the world. I'm not asking anybody to be a saint, but as I keep hearing the mentality, and I love this, which is just be better than yesterday. That's the goal. But excuse me, but also remember, when you're practicing kindness, that it starts at home. Make sure you're kind to yourself.
Yes. Absolutely. And, with that, give yourself a hug this week and love yourself and then love others. I think that's a great way to end it.